the reaction from other broadcasters, not only here but also abroad, and I know this because I've spoken to many broadcasters here and abroad, from what they saw, what Channel 4 did with the Paralympic Games in 2012, was they were jealous. They were really jealous because they didn't believe that Channel 4 could pull it off. And what they saw post the 2012 Games was that if you have talented people who have a disability, be it one leg, in a wheelchair, partially sighted, they can still produce and present a fantastic games, as indeed all we saw. And what I believe is the reaction of the success from what Channel 4 did in 2012 was it caused other broadcasters to wake up and believe that, hey, disabled people actually can present, and we can be journalists, and we can do phenomenal things on screen in representing disability and disability sports. And the 5 years since the 2012 Games, I believe there's been a huge increase in presence on screen and in the media in regards to disabled people and disabled issues. The reason why I want to go on to talk about why I believe the World Para-Athletics Championships, which were a couple of months back, need to come back to London is this. When I was here, I don't know if anybody was here during the World Para-Athletics a couple of months ago now, it was phenomenal, just like it was phenomenal during the 2012 Games as well. I believe it needs to come back here because when people saw what they saw in 2012 and 2 months ago, we as the UK showed the strengths, all the good things about disability sport and disability period. I saw the Doha Games, which was 2 years ago, the World Championships. Stadiums at best had a few thousand at a time in them. At the worst, had 150 people scattered in an 8,000 capacity stadium. The reaction, I believe, from what people saw at the 2012 Games to the Games 2 months ago, has an impact on days like today. Because I genuinely believe that people saw the 2012 Games who were disabled and thought, that's phenomenal. Great stadiums, full, great presentation. They felt represented as disabled people for the first time, I believe, definitely in my lifetime, on television for what they can do rather than what they can't do. The championships 2 months ago did the same thing. It wasn't quite as full as the 2012 Paralympic Games, but even half filling that stadium is an achievement in itself. That's a big stadium, and to have it half filled for disability sports, I believe was a really, really, really important moment for disability sports and disabled people, period. So the reaction from people seeing that encourages people to believe that this country treats disabled people differently to a lot of other countries, because a lot of other countries will not have invested the coverage and the hours and the manpower in showing those two championships in the way that the UK did. So for me, when the game's finished, I thought to myself, right, got to do it again. Got to do it again. 2 years' time, it's got to come back here. We do it great, we do it big. And then someone said, well, hang on a minute. It's called the World Para-Athletics Championships. That goes against the whole principle of having a global tournament. You wouldn't have the World Cup in Brazil every 4 years and invite the world, because then that would be the Brazil Cup that we take part in. The whole point of a global tournament is that it goes global. So what about the Middle East? What about Australia? What about America or parts of Europe? They want athletics as well. So I was like, yeah, kind of got a good point there. But then I thought, what's most important here? The most important things are two things. One, that disability sport is represented and it keeps moving forward post-2012. And secondly, that this disability is represented in a way that is as positive and progressive. And I think on both points, the UK has shown on 2 tournaments that we do that better than anywhere else. So I believe, yes, it goes against the whole point of having a global tournament, having it in one country in 2 consecutive championships. But I believe that if people watching the World Para-Athletics Championships and the Paralympics see the positive impact it has on disabled people, that for me is worth going 1 step back to go 2 steps forward. Because no one wants to see stadiums that are empty. Nobody wants to see the champions on a channel that only gives it 1 hour a day. Why can't we have what Channel 4 did during the Paralympics and have 150 hours over, I think it was 10 days of tournament action? That for me has an impact on days like today. And I was also at an event 2 weeks ago called Superhero Para Tri, where there was a similar kind of concept. It's very inclusive, very family orientated. But I believe people have come today and to that championships because they saw what they saw 2 months ago and 5 years ago and believed that I can take part in sport, that there's an opportunity for me to go and run, push, cycle a bike, do some boccia, do some wheelchair basketball, and it not be a big deal. 9 out of 10 people don't want to be Paralympians. Most people, but everyone wants to take part in sport, right? We all want to push, we all want to run, so why can't we do that? So the reason why fundamentally I believe the World Para-Athletics Championships needs to come back to London is because of the impact it has on the wider disabled community, in that they see full stadiums on TV, prime time, and it makes disabled people represented in a way that we've never seen before. Now, whether it happens or not is unlikely. The Paralympics is attached to obviously the Olympics, and that happens on a rotational basis, continent to continent. So the last one was in South America, Brazil. The next one's in Tokyo. After that, I believe it goes then to North America. So we won't get the next one anyway, but the World Championships we can get. We might not get it, but I believe that we should get it, because people all over the world who are disabled need to turn on their televisions and see what they saw 5 years ago and 2 months ago. Full stadiums with disabled people being represented in the most positive light. And the offspring of that, bringing it back to today, as I mentioned, is that today's like today are really well attended because people here believe that they will be represented and they can do the things that they maybe couldn't do before, or felt like they couldn't do before. They now feel they can attend days like Parallel London and have an opportunity to have fun and just take part in sport with no pressure of, you've got to be a Paralympian, you've got to be an elite sports person. Everyone here doesn't want to be a Paralympian, but they do want to take part in sport. So that is fundamentally why I believe the next Para World Athletics Championships should be held here in London again. Thank you very much.
So, in terms of your own upbringing, was there a time in which you were able to look onto the TV and see someone who's from a disabled background achieving or excelling in sport? Or do you think it's been a watershed moment now in our current epoch?
I think both. I think, yes, there was somebody who I saw competing. So I started playing wheelchair basketball when I was 13 years old. And about a year later, I met Adi Adepitan, who is now a very good friend of mine. He plays wheelchair basketball. I've known him for 15 years. And I saw him on that BBC Ident advert. I don't know if you remember it, the one, you remember it, where there was 3 other athletes, Jiggy and Adi, doing the spinny things on the BBC. That one. And that was on for about 5 years, prior to EastEnders, prior to the news. And that was my first experience of seeing somebody in a wheelchair, somebody disabled, being cool. It was cool. So not only did I know Adi, but it was cool, and it made me think, okay, disabled people can do good things on television and can be represented. So that was my first kind of example of seeing someone in the media and in the limelight doing something positive, and me believing then, okay, cool, I could be a top wheelchair basketball athlete.
So then if you'd never seen that ident yourself or known him, do you think you'd be where you are now?
Yes, I would, but that's because I'm quite a confident and driven person anyway. The bigger question is, would it have allowed other people who are not as cocky, arrogant, confident as I am to have the belief to feel like, yeah, I can be a top sportsman in disability sports. So for me, I probably would have continued on my journey of doing what I eventually went on to do. But I believe there's a lot of people that were inspired by people like Adi, that had he not been on television, not gone on to do the things that I'm sure they're doing right now. Yeah.
So in terms of exclusivity, would you think there'd ever be a time in which you'd have a disabled game literally at the same time as like an Olympics game, in terms of you've got, not Usain Bolt, obviously he's already retired, but you've got the Usain Bolt at that time in the 100 metres, sure, and the next race is the wheelchair race, etc., etc. Or do you think they should still be separate but equal in terms of things?
Well, I've asked that question many times to athletes when I do pieces and interviews for where I work, and the general consensus amongst most para-athletes is they don't really want that kind of, they don't really want it to be amalgamated. Logistically, it might be quite difficult in terms of how you actually practically do that, could bring up some problems. But secondly, I think the reason why they don't want it to happen is because they want their own limelight. So I think a lot of them, most of them I've spoken to, have said, we're actually quite happy to have our own championships, because then the limelight is solely on us. And I don't know about everybody here, but speaking to people post-2012 games that I did, they enjoyed the Paralympics, more than the Olympics. The Olympics were phenomenal in 2012. They were amazing. And I think that maybe because people hadn't expected what was to come with the Paralympics, people were doubly blown away and impressed by what they saw. So me personally, I'm comfortable with the 2 championships being separate, because I think that there's a fear that one may get swallowed up by the other one, and I don't think you want that, because in their own right, you're seeing phenomenal world-class sport, and you want to see that in its own right. But also practically, there might be some difficulties doing that in certain sports at least.
So then for anyone in the audience or anyone at home is thinking, oh, how can I engage more in the Paralympic sports? What's the first step for them to do that?
The first step is to come to days like today. So that is really, really important. And I asked one of the WizKids members in our tent over there about whether it was important that this happened on a more regular basis. And the answer was yes. I attended, like I mentioned, 2 weeks ago, the superhero para-triathlete, athlon, which was put on by former Paralympian Sophie Warner. And this being 2 weeks later, we need more of these sorts of things, because everybody here gets inspired by just being able to do sport. I would probably put good money on the fact that most people that come here today didn't come here thinking this could be the prelude to me being a Paralympian in 4, 8, 12 years' time. But they might realize that they're better at something than they realized they were. So it only takes a spark of attending days like today to realizing, wow, I'm actually quite good at running, pushing, playing basketball, wheelchair rugby, and then that's the inspiration they need to then go on and goes to find their local club and give it a go and develop the skills that they maybe have. So I would say to people just to kind of attend any opportunity you can where sport is happening, be it something big like this or something local in your community. Just go and attend, go and give it a go. You may not like it in terms of going on to be something professional, but you may enjoy it and just want to attend it on a Sunday afternoon when you're free.
So in terms of asking or wishing that the next Paralympic Games would be here once again in London, what do you think the stumbling block is for places outside of London or even outside of Britain? What's holding them back from embracing more inclusivity?
Themselves, to be honest. I don't think anything more than themselves. I mean, being in London, we have here a fantastic stadium. So the first thing you need is the place. Do you have the location to hold a Games? Yes, we do in London. We also have it in Birmingham, probably Manchester, other parts of the country as well. Secondly, transportation. There's no point having a fantastic stadium that can hold the Games if people can't get there. We have that. The Jubilee line is very accessible as far as I'm aware in terms of transport getting here. And just having the belief system within that city, that town, that country, that we can do this. I don't understand why more people don't invest in their country in putting on these sorts of games, because London has shown now twice in 5 years you can put on elite sporting competitions that the country will embrace and get behind.
So finally, the last question was more of a statement for yourself. In terms of people who have a voice, who are broadcasters like yourself, why is it important for more people from different backgrounds, for more disabled people, more people from anywhere really, to express themselves and share these stories? How does that empower the audience like this or anyone at home that's watching this video?
I think it empowers them in a really big way, because I think the more voices that are shouting and are saying the same positive message, that resonates to people, and it's about belief. So you might have been someone that pre-2012 was in a wheelchair, had one arm, partially sighted, that maybe didn't believe that you could do sport. You didn't really believe it because you never see it, you never hear it. Post-2012, there are now more people that are shouting from the rooftops. Disability sport is now a big thing at elite level and grassroots level. So I think the more people like myself in the media, but people that are here today, just kind of spread the word about disability sport and opportunities, the better. Stronger in numbers, and as the hashtag is side by side, the more of us that are kind of spouting that message month on after month after month, I think that the more it resonates with everybody. And what's also important is that we don't just wait every 4 years. A frustration of mine is that we tend to make a big deal of disability sport for 6 months leading up to the Paralympics, and then a week or two after, and then it kind of goes away again. It's really crucial that we keep the voices going and keep the momentum going, and Parallel London keep these events going, even monthly. This costs a lot of money, I'm sure. That might be unrealistic to do it now on a monthly basis, but why not twice a year? Twice a year. Let's keep it going to make sure that by the time the Paralympics come around, it's a known thing. We all know about it and we all just accept it as a normal thing. Disability sport is sport.
So once again, ladies and gentlemen, can we thank Jarrett Bryan here for another amazing talk, and hopefully we'll see more of you and more speakers and people coming down to Paralympics. So let's give him another round of applause, please, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.